Brightest Blessings. This is Raven, and today is the much awaited, sorry, my chair's really creaky today, the much awaited shadow work video. After posting my shadow work book of shadows quite a while ago now, I've had loads and loads of people asking me questions about shadow work, about where to begin, what certain topics within that book of shadows meant. So I figured what we'd do is start exploring some of those areas together. So we'll have a little talk through these. All of these are available, all of these sheets, and what we'll do is talk about where to find them and what to do at the end of the video, okay? Get myself sorted. I will apologise before I begin because my fibromyalgia is quite bad at the moment with the heat. So I have got the fan on. If it's really, really bad and you can hear the fan and it's annoying, I am going to apologise now, but I can't cope without the fan on. And because the heat is making me a little fuzzy-headed, I may stutter a little bit and I may repeat myself. I will try and go through the video after and edit any of that out, but if I do repeat myself, I do apologise. Please understand it is part of my disability, okay? So when I began shadow work, I did a lot of research, as most of you will have seen if you've seen the shadow work book of shadows video. If you haven't, I will link that below and perhaps watch that first. As with any of the areas of paganism, I like to do a lot of research before I begin doing witchcraft or spell work or working with deities. I like to know as much as possible first, so then there are no surprises. And my ultimate goal as a pagan and as a witch is to higher my vibration, is to make my subconscious and my conscious mind of a higher level, so that when my soul passes on to the next reincarnation, I will be of a higher caliber, if that makes sense. To me, reincarnation and souls and, you know, all of this sort of area is to do with learning. If you're on this path, that's the first step, in my point of view. This is the first step to hiring those vibrations, to be able to commune with the universe, to be able to commune with the deities or whatever it is that you believe in. You need to be able to higher your vibration. And that's really difficult to do if you haven't put the work in first. So doing the shadow work is one of the first steps I would suggest to anybody wanting to work with the universal energies, with deities. You will get so much more out of your practice and your belief system once you know yourself. Witchcraft to me is all about a journey into the self and not about looking outward. Yes, I want to evolve my consciousness and subconscious mind to be able to commune with these energies, but in total and in whole, in the whole purpose of me doing that is to get to know myself. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to do shadow work. Now, people that have heard of shadow work before quite often will automatically go, oh, no, that's all about counselling, that's all about this, that's all about that. No, it isn't. There's nothing negative about shadow work. There's nothing positive about shadow work. It's all about your own personal outlook. Some of the areas covered will be difficult. And when we discuss the soul wounds, as I'm about to, some of the topics are going to be difficult for people to hear. They may be difficult for you to work through, but you will feel better by the end of it. And that is the goal. And I have found with my own mental health, I struggle with depression myself, that by working on these areas, my mental health is now 10 times better, if not 1,000,000 times better. I am more able to cope on a day-to-day basis when things occur that set the depression off. I am able to work through that without causing harm to myself or anybody else or having those debilitating thoughts of not wanting to be here anymore, of struggling day to day, I've got the energy to get up in the morning and carry on because I've learnt the skills to be able to do that through doing shadow work. There are obviously many, many ways to work through mental health, and obviously medication is one way, and I have had medication in the past and it did help, but this helped me the most. Having good mental health is a really big issue at the moment for everybody, and I think especially since COVID, everybody has struggled in one sense or another. In these days where everything is at hand, you can get to anything you want to get to, it makes it incredibly difficult when you struggle, because it's so easy to get pretty much anything you want. But happiness and contentness in yourself isn't as easy, and that's why so much now we struggle. If you think back to the olden days where we didn't have social media, we didn't have televisions, we didn't have as much technology, people worked really hard. Day in, day out, they got up in the morning, they went outside, they picked their vegetables for the day, they milked their cows, they got a chicken in to cook for the day. You know, all of these things, you worked to be able to live, okay? And not the way that we do now for money. I mean a day-to-day, going back to old school values of working on the land, hard, solid work. They didn't have the same level of depression as we do in this day and age. And I really do believe that a lot of that is because everything is so easy to access. We haven't had to work for anything that we have, not in a real sense. So when hardships come our way, we don't have the skills there to be able to work through that. And that's where we struggle. So doing this has really taken me back, along with my other books of shadows that you've seen, about, you know, working on the land, about making my own meals, about canning and drying foods, about making my own recipes and spells. All of those things are going back to basics. And it really is since then that I have become the person that I am, and I really wanted to share that with other people because I feel it's really important, especially now. When I started the shadow work and I did all the research, there are so many different topics within shadow work to concentrate on, but the first thing that I feel I would have liked to have learnt first was about soul wounds, because they are at the very core of our being. I'm going to try and not put my hands over everything because I'm aware that people are going to want to screenshot these. There are 5 core soul wounds, and if you haven't heard of soul wounds before, the basic principle is that when we're born, we experience life as it comes, and there are times where traumatic things happen to us. They happen to everybody, and when they happen to our souls at a very young age on this plane of existence, it becomes a wound that we carry with us for the rest of our lives. What a lot of people don't realise is that they can also be passed on from previous lifetimes if they haven't been resolved. So quite often there will be issues in your life that you don't really understand why it's an issue. If you've been one of those people that have been, you know, through abuse at a young age, that is obviously going to become a soul wound. But if you haven't experienced abuse, but you're having a lot of the issues that result from abuse, it may well be that you experienced abuse in a previous lifetime. And that's just one example. There's lots of examples that I could have used, but that was one off the top of my head. When we don't heal these wounds, it will create other soul wounds, and it will create more issues throughout our lifetime, and then pass them on to next lifetimes if you believe in such things as I do. And I discovered within my own practice that actually I have soul wounds from previous lifetimes as well as soul wounds from this one. Some of the topics that we cover here are quite difficult, but I do really want to stress that shadow work is not a negative practice. Shadow work isn't a positive practice, shadow work encompasses all energies, positive and negative, light and dark, good and bad. Although soul wounds indicate that this is a negative topic, and it is, we need to start with the soul wounds because they are very important and they are at the core of our soul. As we go through shadow work, that's where even some of the positive things that have happened to us in previous lives and in this one affects who we are as a person and will enable us to get to that higher vibration. Soul wounds are quite frequently overlooked because a lot of people haven't heard of them. And because of that, this is why I wanted to do a video about it. The 5 core soul wounds, and I say core because there are lots of subsects to these core wounds, and you'll see what I mean as we go through them, okay? So the 5 core soul wounds are the wound of rejection, the wound of abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, and injustice. Quite a few of you are going to say, well, I've been through all of those, and you will have. Everybody will have experienced some of these, but that doesn't mean that that is a wound that you have, and we're going to go into those in greater detail in a few moments. So on the next page, I've put some very general signs that you have some soul wounds that you need to work on. This doesn't mean that you have to have all of them, and it may mean that you have all of them. This is just a general idea, and we're going to break each of the soul wounds down in a moment. So some of the issues that you may have relating to your shadow work are listed here. I've only put 20, there are many, many more, but these are more generalised. Shame-led thoughts, damaged goods thinking. How many of us, when we've experienced something bad, do we say, oh, well, it's obviously my fault, I'm no good to anybody. You know, I'm not good enough looking, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not thin enough, I'm not a nice enough person, I'm not clever enough. This is the sort of thing that I mean by damaged goods thinking. Safety and security have broken, and what I mean about that is that you find it very, very difficult to feel safe and secure, whether that be with other people, whether that be with your own company or in your own home. Fear-led thoughts, being afraid of things. There's nothing wrong with being afraid of things, but there comes a time when fear is actually impacting your life. Frozen emotions. This is something that I'm particularly, what's the word? My mind's gone blank. This is me, basically, frozen emotions. What happens when something bad happens to me, or in the past anyway, as opposed to becoming upset about it, I just freeze the emotion and I don't show any emotion about it. I don't talk about it. I don't let anybody know that there's an issue. I just crack on and keep it to myself. And by bottling that up, that causes issues as well. Trust issues with God and others. Now, I've just put God as a general. God as in deity and universal energies. What I mean by this is you have a distrust of the deity's path for you. You have a distrust that perhaps the journey you're on isn't the right one. Perhaps the signs that you've received you don't believe are signs. This is what I'm meaning by trust issues with God. Fearful of life in general, anger towards God and others. Quite often what happens when something bad occurs is we'll go, oh, for God's sake, it's God's fault, and, you know, the goddess didn't give me what I wanted. How could the goddess let this happen to me? And being angry. Through working through the shadow work, we see that actually bad things have to happen to us to be able to learn. So having anger, although it's a perfectly natural emotion to have, we need to try and work through that. struggle surrendering to God. So here I mean surrendering yourself to the God and Goddess, to the universal energy, whatever energy is that you believe in. As I said, although I've written God, I mean it in a very general sense. This has nothing to do with Christianity or any faith in particular other than paganism, which is what I am. I am pagan. It was just easier to write God as opposed to deities, because a lot of people do not understand what deities means if they're at the start of their practice. So when I say struggle to surrendering to God, what I mean is that when we get these signs or we're directed on a certain path, we struggle to give in to that. So for example, a friend of mine has recently come onto the path because she was directed this way. She found my videos on YouTube, she found my Etsy shop, she found other people with the same beliefs. She was given a gift that was pagan natured, but she really struggled to give herself over to that. She was constantly fighting against it. And this is what I mean by struggling to surrender. Difficulty discerning the will of God or the Goddess or the universal energies. So this is where it doesn't matter what comes at you, you just don't seem to be able to work through it. Perhaps you have been given a sign and you know it's a sign, but you're really struggling. You just can't seem to get past that. Low self-esteem. A lot of us struggle with low self-esteem. Self-blame, unforgiveness. Forgiveness is a really powerful tool, both for yourselves and for others. You can't forgive other people if you don't forgive yourself. So that's really important. Your identity is that of a victim. This is the sort of woe is me factor, where when something bad happens, you're automatically the victim and you don't take action. Excuse me. You don't take accountability for your own actions. When you've done something wrong, you should be accountable for those actions and not be the victim of circumstance. And this is one of the things that I'm talking about. A very chaotic life. Now, this is a difficult one because as a whole, without generalising, most pagans that I know lead very chaotic lives. They are the sort of people that want to be involved in lots of things. They want their hands in all the pies. They want to know everybody and know all the different areas of learning. They have 10 or so different things on the go at any one time. And although chaos is part of life, there has to be some calm. Distrust of self and your decisions. Emotionally driven. Guilt over abuse. Now, guilt over abuse is a big one, and a lot of people suffer with this, even if they're not pagan, feeling that it was their own fault when clearly it isn't. Concept of spirituality damaged. So this again is something that I see quite often, especially people that are new to the craft. Sorry, I'm going to cough again. Sorry. When they're new to the pagan path, they will quite often have gone through other religions and other spiritual practices before they get to paganism, and their experiences have really damaged their concept of what paganism is and what they should and shouldn't do. Worry and anxiety driven, that's me. I worry about everything. I am a very anxious person as I've gotten older. Never was when I was younger, but now I really am an anxious person, and I'm not ashamed to say that I'm on medication for anxiety. Helplessness. Who of us hasn't felt helpless? What I mean by helplessness here is a severe, overwhelming feeling of helplessness all the time. That is a really big sign of having a soul wound. And as I said at the beginning, these are just a few. There are many, many more. But if you have sort of 3 to 5 of these, I would suggest looking into soul wounds, okay? So now we're going to start looking at the individual soul wounds. So the wound of rejection. Now this typically activates from the moment of conception until the first year of life in relation to a child who felt rejected by a parent of the same sex. So in my instance, my mother. I'm not saying that that is the case, but for this context, a parent of the same sex would be my mother. As a result, she doesn't believe in his right to exist. Now, as I said, this can be passed down through reincarnation, so it may be that this has come from a previous lifetime, okay? This is presented in the following ways: dissatisfaction with who you are, assessing yourself as a meaningless person, lack of self-respect, considering yourself as a family freak. Now, I know a lot of pagans that would consider themselves as the family freak or the black sheep. Just because you feel like that doesn't necessarily mean you have this wound, okay? Anxiety, escaping into alcohol, drugs, sudden trips, virtual games and other forms of escapism. Rich imagination, isolation leading to loneliness, anchoring in the material world through a sense of being busy, and perfectionism. Now again, there are more, but these are the key areas. Now, if you're looking at this or hearing this and thinking, wow, that sounds like me 100%, I am not saying that you have the wound of rejection, but I would urge you to look into the wound of rejection and try and work through some of the exercises that you can find online anywhere and see if this is an actual wound for you, because if it is, it's important to start healing from those, and we will talk briefly at the end of the video about how to heal from these wounds. The wound of abandonment activates between the first and third years of life in a relationship with a parent of the opposite sex due to the lack of parental support on the emotional plane and lack of attentive attention. So in my case, this would be my father, yes, because I'm female and it's parent of the opposite sex, so it would be my father. This manifests itself through problems with independence, suffering from sadness without knowing its cause, crying alone sometimes for long hours, developing the victim's attitude, believing in bad luck, causing dramas, diseases in order to arouse pity from others or for others. Celebrity behaviour, constantly talking about oneself, problems with making decisions and acting independently, picking on others who don't, not listening to the advice of others, changeable moods, problems ending relationships, and fear of anger or aggressive people in general. So obviously these are quite similar, but obviously it's different parents, okay? Now, as I said, that's not to say that these haven't come from previous lifetimes. So if you're a person that has two same-sex parents, but you have both of these wounds, I would imagine that that wound has come from a previous life, or perhaps somebody else in your life of the opposite sex that was like a parent figure, okay? It doesn't always have to be your actual parent. It can be somebody that is a father or a mother figure in your life. The wound of humiliation activates between the first and third year of life in a relationship with a parent who was exulting in all kinds of physical and sensual pleasure, causing shame in a child. So when I say sensual pleasure, please don't think I'm talking about sexual abuse and things, although that can be the case. I'm just talking about parents who are overly over the top when it comes to sensuality. This manifests by the impression of being constantly observed and embedded, doing everything to feel worthy, both of yourself and of others, serving everyone you love, restraint in your words, the tendency to justify others' behaviours, sorry, coughing again, reluctance to admit to your own sensuality, suppressing your sensual drive, fear of punishment for the excessive joy of life, putting the needs of others above your own, feeling often sloppy, dirty, or unworthy. The wound of betrayal. This occurs between the 2nd and 4th years of life in a relationship with a parent of the opposite sex due to the parent's attention not adequate to the child's expectations. So that's really important here. That's not to say that your parent wasn't an adequate parent. It was that you as a child felt that your expectations were not met. And also a loss of trust in a parent due to unfulfilled promises, lies, or signs of weakness. This manifests by imposing your will and point of view on others, no contact with your own sensitivity, demonstrating your own strength, a constant need to improve, attaching importance to reputation, lack of tolerance for lies, high expectations of others, applying rigour, manipulation and control, strong need for all planning and a lack of flexibility in relation to unforeseen situations, and a lack of trust in the opposite sex. The wound of injustice. It occurs between the age of 4 and 6 in relation to same-sex parents in children who have experienced parental dryness. Now, where I've put same-sex parents, I don't want you to think that I mean same-sex parents. What I mean is the same sex as you. So in my case, this would be my mother. Okay? Showing your vitality despite being tired, difficulties in admitting to experiencing problems, constant optimism, controlling yourself to always be perfect, fear of losing control, problems showing feelings, problems creating a satisfying intimate relationship, very high demands on your body such as not acknowledging your illness, great acceptance of pain and cold, and putting your skills above your feelings. So what I say about putting your skills above your feelings, perhaps you are, let's use me as an example. I have the skill to make journals and digital art, and sometimes I will do too much. And as much as I don't want to sit here and do a journal cover or sit here and make a YouTube video, for example, I will put my skills above my feelings because I feel that that's important to do. I want to share my skill and my knowledge, and that's more important than whether I want to do it or not at that particular moment in time. Okay? So we've got those. Now, I'm just going to move that to the side for a minute because we're going to talk about healing from those in a moment. I've created some journaling pages that can be printed in varying sizes. I've printed them in A4 here so that you can see them nicely. The idea of these are the start of your shadow work process, okay? Perhaps you're not sure where to begin. I would suggest starting something like this. Now, you can go online really quickly and easily and find shadow work journaling prompts. I had them in my book of shadows. I had a whole list, pages and pages full of them. These are a few that are really good to start with because they get you thinking, okay? Now, these aren't necessarily specifically to do with soul wounds, but they will help in that area. So, memory deletion is the first one. Is there a memory you have that you would like to delete forever? Now, don't say no, because I know for a fact everybody has at least one memory that they wish never happened. If so, what is it? So this is where you would write that down. How would deleting the memory of it impact your life today? So if that event hadn't happened, how do you think your life would be different right now? And this can be something big or it can be something small. If you're a little bit worried about writing it down, Perhaps start with the smaller things first, and you can do this over and over again. If you've got lots of memories that you want to get rid of, and they can be happy or sad, positive or negative, write them down. Because once they're down on paper, you can keep looking back at this to see if you've healed. How would you feel? Is there a second memory that goes with that? Because quite often, one thing leads to another. If that hadn't have happened in the first place, would all these other memories have occurred? And how would that make my life be different now? Would I feel any different about myself or the people around me if I didn't have that memory? So I've left a fair amount of space, but there's no reason why you couldn't write even more than this. And as I said, write as many memories down as you want. By putting these memories down, sometimes memories will come up that you didn't even realise were there. Now, I can use this as a really good example. When I practice shadow work, I tend to do a meditation first. Just a grounding and calming meditation. And I ask that the universe come forward and just point me in the right direction. In this instance, I would be asking the universal deities and the universal energies to bring forth those memories from childhood that may have caused me harm or may have positively impacted my life. Both are just as important. As I said, it's neither negative nor positive. Both are just as good, okay? After the meditation, this is where I start to write things down. It may be just bullet points of specific memories, and as I'm writing them, generally that's when other memories come up. Now, I'm the sort of person that I say struggles with, because sometimes it is a struggle. I have flashbacks of things. I can be sat reading a magazine and I'll have a flashback of something where I physically see the memory in front of my eyes and sort of relive that memory. That can be really difficult. And if you're one of those people and you begin on this journey, it's going to be hard for you, okay? Because you're going to relive things that you perhaps don't want to. But this is a really important step, because once they're written down, you can work on them. If you're not happy to write things down, what I suggest to people is perhaps make a piece of artwork. Some people really struggle to say how they feel, and I'm one of them. Or perhaps you're worried about other people finding this and you don't want them to find this memory. Do a piece of art. If you're not very good at drawing, find some magazines or print some pictures out online and make a collage. If you're not very good at painting, try doing something different. The only thing I would say is that whatever you make, try and make it a permanent fixture so that you can keep going back to it. Because eventually you will go back to that and reassess. Now, I found in my own personal work that certain memories that I viewed as negative, I've since gone back on and they no longer feel negative to me. They're not positive either. It's a neutral feeling. So that shows to me that I've healed from that. Okay? It's really important that we look back on these things. And that's one of the really important things about shadow work, is that it's something that you constantly are able to reflect on. And how you feel today will be completely different to how you feel next week, in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. I have shadow work dating back to when I was 15 years old. I'm now 35. So, 20 years worth of shadow work. There are things there that really impacted me as a 15-year-old that really don't impact me now. And I've been able to look back on those and say, actually, that wasn't as important to me as I thought it was. That didn't impact me as much as I thought it did, because it's not something I'm worried about now. And that's an important part of our journey. You're learning about yourself. It also means that you can look back at your own behaviour. So perhaps that memory isn't about what somebody or something has done to you. Perhaps it's something that you've done. Perhaps it's your reaction to something that somebody's done. Perhaps it's your behaviour. Perhaps you stole something. Perhaps you hurt somebody. This is all about looking at behaviours as well and being accountable for those. All right. The next one, mirror work. Look directly into your eyes in a mirror for about a minute or so. Relax as you do so. What kinds of thoughts and feelings arise as you're doing this? Now, you can always jot these down if you want to, or you can wait until the end and write them down after. Is it an uncomfortable feeling? Do you feel silly? Do you feel spiritual, self-aware? Write anything that comes to mind down, even something really trivial, write it down. Mirror work can be a powerful tool to see what's lurking in your shadow side, as well as remind you of your authentic, spiritually involved self. Write about your experience. A good example here would be you're having a really excellent, fantastic day. You've been to the beach, you've sunbathed, you've had so much fun, you've had ice cream, you've had a lovely takeaway meal, you've spent time with friends and family. It's been the best day ever. You then decide to do this mirror work because you're in a good mood. What could go wrong? As you look at yourself in the mirror, perhaps you're having negative thoughts about yourself. Oh, look at my eyes. Why do I look so tired and withdrawn? All of these things are what you should be writing down, okay? In my personal experience, I try and do this at least once a week, the mirror work. Sometimes more. If I'm struggling a lot with something, I'll do it a lot. Self-esteem especially. If I'm struggling with my self-esteem, I'll look at myself in the mirror for a good minute or so every day and write down whatever is coming to me. Because I know that eventually the feelings of negativity and issues of my self-esteem will dwindle, because we all have days where we feel fantastic. We all have days where we look at ourselves in the mirror and think, my God, I am the most beautiful or handsome creature on the planet. And then the next day, you're like, oh my gosh, what a troll. It happens to everybody. Even if you believe you are the ugliest, most disgusting person on the planet, which I don't believe, by the way, nobody's ugly or disgusting. But if that's what you believe about yourself, there has to be a day where you don't feel like you're as ugly or as disgusting. Perhaps you've tried on a really nice outfit. Perhaps somebody's complimented you on your new hairstyle, or the way you've shaved your beard, or the way you acted when you did something. The point with mirror work is that we're looking at what's on the subconscious shadow. Because even though we're not consciously thinking something, it'll be there and it'll be impacting your memories. On to the next one. Writing a letter to your ego. This is going to be difficult for those of you who struggle with ego. And I say that because a lot of people don't realise that they... If you have... How can I put this without sounding horrible? If you're the sort of person that has a very vibrant and... you're egotistical. Let's just leave it at that. If you're an egotistical person, and there are many of us out there, and I say us, but I don't necessarily mean me, there are many people out there who are egotistical. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's who you are. But this exercise will make you struggle. Everybody has an ego. Everybody. So this is about assessing the ego. Make a list of any negative characteristics you identify with about yourself. Now, although we're concentrating on the negative here, there's a reason for that, which I will explain in a moment. Examples could be having anxiety, depression, rage, fear, poor work ethic, lack of discipline, lack of commitment, etc. Then embody the God part of you that doesn't see any of those characteristics or traits. Write a letter from this God part of you, this healed and whole part of you, to that part that's struggling. Be loving and compassionate. Be encouraging. What I mean to the egotistical people here when I say you might struggle with this is that you will either feel like you have no negative characteristics, or you're going to struggle to write the letter to the negative characteristics. And that's fine, just keep practicing. I know a whole host of people that will have a list 10 pages long of negative characteristics, but they cannot write the letter to that part of themselves. And that is the journey that I want you to try and go on. Because as I said, there are times when we are kind and loving to ourselves, and there are positives about all of us. So even if you can't write a letter, perhaps write bullet points. Perhaps stick a photo down that you think, that's my godlike self. That's when I'm most myself, right there. There are ways of doing things that mean you don't have to write if you're not comfortable writing. It's all about finding what's right for you. This one I try and do when I'm having issues with my self-esteem and with my depression. With those negative, niggly thoughts that come into my head, this is something that I do. Because I do love myself, and I do appreciate myself and appreciate my worth as a person. But there are times when I really don't. I don't want to look at myself. I don't want to hear about myself. I don't want compliments from people. And this is when I will do this. These days, this isn't a common one that I do, because I feel I've healed a lot in this area. But when I first began shadow work, this was something I did almost weekly. If you feel like you need to do this daily, do it daily. Do it differently every day. There's no reason why you couldn't. And another fun thing that I like to do with this, if I don't want to write, is I will do a self-portrait. Now, the self-portrait is something that everybody struggles with, because our view of ourselves is very different to what the outside world sees. I will try and do a self-portrait, on a day where I'm feeling low and depressed and having negative thoughts. And then I will do one when I'm feeling good and positive and feeling worth the world, and I would class that as my godlike self. I then will sit and compare the two. That is a really important, I can't stress enough, really important step forward, because you will physically see the difference. Now, this one that's negative, put that away. Don't look at that again once you've done it until you finish this one, the positive one. Because it is shocking how different those two portraits are. And it's something so quick and easy to do. If you can't draw a self-portrait, perhaps you could just write those characteristics down while you're looking in the mirror. Physical attributes, okay, to begin with. So on a negative day, for example, I don't like my hair, I don't like my eyes, perhaps my skin's a little bit greasy, perhaps I have a spot somewhere, I look tired, my hair's all over the place, I'm not wearing nice clothes, I haven't been looking after myself, my teeth need brushing, all of those sorts of things, write those down. And then on a more positive day, write things down about yourself and how you look in the mirror right at that moment, and see the difference. It's all about getting that clarity of movement between the positive and the negative. You cannot have one without the other, and that is part of the shadow work. More often than not, when people suffer with depression, they stay in the negative. They can't get to the positive. And when they do get to the positive, they don't recognise it as being positive. They still only see the negative side. So this was a really important step for me, and I hope for many of you as well, who are maybe suffering at the moment with depression or anxiety about something, seeing that there is a constant ebb and flow. Just because you feel bad today doesn't mean you're going to feel bad tomorrow. So don't let it impact your life today. That is the key message with this. Now, I mentioned anxiety. You can also do this for anxiety in the same manner. So perhaps there are days where you are really anxious about leaving the house. Now, this is one for me. Anxious about leaving the house. I list the reasons why I'm anxious about leaving the house and how I'm feeling about being anxious. So when I feel anxious, I get palpitations, I get sweaty, I feel sick, I don't want to move, I feel overly tired and heavy-bodied. There are times when I'm happy to leave the house and I'm not anxious about it. So I will write down why I'm not anxious about going out, and that gives me the ebb and flow of the positive and the negative, and getting that balance in the middle. Paganism and witchcraft is all about balance. And the whole point of getting to that higher vibration of yourself is to find that balance, in my opinion anyway. Once you've sought balance and you found it, that is when you achieve that higher self. So that has to incorporate darkness and light, positive and negative, good and bad. This is why I have so much of an issue with people who are very unicorns and rainbows and fairies and everything's positive and light. It can't be. This is why I have issues with people that only believe in a god or a goddess and not anything else. Because you cannot have good without bad, light without dark, positive without negative, male without female. You have to have both. And it's about finding that balance within yourself. Okay? I am rambling. I do apologise. That is part of my fibro. This is the last one. Support level. Do you feel supported by deities? So deities, I mean gods. The universe, family, friends. Make a list of those you know who you can 100% count on if you truly needed something. If you find yourself lacking a support system, think about if you felt supported by your parents when you were growing up, or supported by whomever cared for you. Could feelings of being alone and abandonment, being unworthy, be lurking in your shadow? Can you picture what your life would look like with a fantastic support system, and write about what that would look like? Now, there's two reasons for this. Obviously, this is about getting down to the abandonment wound. But this is also really important in being your own support system. I'm very lucky that I have a very loving and kind family, and I have very loving and kind friends. But I have also lacked support from those people at certain times in my life when it comes to certain things that have happened to me or certain ways that I'm feeling. And I would have liked more support, let's put it that way. I have developed my own support system of supporting myself. And this is one of the key things that you'll learn from doing this, because not only are you going to write this list, if you find yourself only having maybe one person, or maybe you have none, maybe you are a complete loner and you have no friends and no family, this is where you can think about how you can support yourself when you're emotionally drained, or on a positive day but you feel like you could do with meeting up with a friend and being a bit social. Perhaps watching YouTube videos makes you feel like you're being more social. That's one of my things. I like to do my YouTube videos or watch YouTube videos so I feel like I'm interacting with somebody even though I'm not. So this is a really good step. Now, these worksheets, journal pages, are on the Patreon for free. I will link that below. It is only these 4 that are free, and the little title page. So if you wanted to print these out to make like a little shadow work book, you can do, because I will, more than likely, if this goes well, I will make more journal prompt pages such as this for free for you guys. So these 4 journal pages and the title are all free on my Patreon, which are listed below. And then the Book of Shadows pages, like these that I have made with all the information that I've talked about, are on Patreon as well, but these are only for paid members. Okay, I know that seems a little bit harsh, but I have to have content for my Patreons, and these actually take me a fair amount of time to write up and decorate and, you know, digitally make. So I understand that some of you may be disappointed if you can't afford or don't want to go onto Patreon for that. But I am uploading lots of free stuff onto Patreon so that everybody can be included, which is why I've put the journal sheets on for free. You can always screenshot this video for the information on here if you're not interested in the pages themselves, all right? So yeah, that's all on Patreon for you. It's already been uploaded, so you can go along there and find those. And as I said, if this video goes well, the hope is I will do more shadow work videos for you based on the information that you've seen in my books of shadows and on my shadow work process. So now we're at the end, or towards the end of the video. We're going to talk about how we heal. So healing soul wounds is a lengthy process, one that can take multiple lifetimes for some, and that's very, very true. It's not an easy fix. These things take time, especially the really deep soul wounds. The key is that you begin, and you are one step closer to enlightenment and that higher vibration, because you're already on the journey. Even just doing one a month, you know, one of these journal pages a month, you're on the journey. So let's look at what you need to start working on during shadow work to heal from these soul wounds. So reflection. The aim through healing is to feel good in your own skin, regardless of other opinions of you from the past, present, and in the future. So an example there would be, I was bullied quite a lot for being a plus size female when I was at school, as many plus size girls do, and boys. That doesn't affect me as an adult. I'm still plus size. I do feel good in my own skin because I have healed that part of myself, okay? That's not to say that I won't have bad days, because obviously I will. But the general overwhelming everyday feeling of not being comfortable in my own skin has gone. Abandonment. Seek comfort in your own company. You are all you need. Quite often, especially now, people seek relationships with people to feel good. They seek friendships to feel good. The key to this is feeling good about yourself on your own. You'll never be happy being with anybody, whether it be in a friendly manner or in a relationship, if you're not happy in yourself. If you can't sit on your own for a few hours and contemplate life, or watch a movie, or do some crafts, you're never going to be happy to go out and socialise with other people. So this is a really important part of healing from abandonment, is you're not abandoning yourself. Because if you're one of those people that needs to be out and constantly on the go with other people, the likelihood is you struggle with abandonment issues, but you're abandoning yourself. So work on that. Humiliation. Be confident of your own wants, needs, and feelings before putting others first. Now that might sound a little bit confusing, but the reason for that is sometimes we do things for other people's benefit. A lot of times we do things for other people's benefit, for fear of being humiliated if we don't. The key here is that if you don't want, need, or have, I've said need, haven't I? That's what I meant. If you don't want or need to do something, don't do it. Obviously, we have to put other people first sometimes, but generally, day-to-day life, put yourself first. If you're not well enough to go out and do something, don't go out. If you let people down, you let people down. Put yourself first. Betrayal. Be your own cheerleader. Again, that one's going to be a bit confusing, but not everybody is going to like you. Not everybody is going to be loyal to you. So this is where the betrayal comes in. If you're your own cheerleader and you big yourself up and you are confident and love yourself, it doesn't matter what anybody else says or whether they betray you, because you're not interested. You are true and loyal to yourself. Injustice. Allow yourself to be you. You are perfect even in your imperfections. Live without fear and judgment. Here again, the injustice part. There are times when people are going to be horrible to you just to be horrible to you. That's just part of life, unfortunately. Humans as a species are naturally very selfish, and to make themselves feel better will quite often be horrible to others when there's no need to be. Even things that you think are imperfect about you make you perfect, because uniqueness and individuality is perfection, and every single person on this planet is unique and an individual. Even identical twins, for example, may look completely identical, but there will be something about them that stands them apart from their sibling. So how do we do all of this? With time, patience, and a little understanding, and forgiveness. Forgiveness is the most important. You need to forgive yourself for everything. Everything. Shadow work entails bringing up some things that may cause you upset, which I've already said, but I promise you it will be worth it. Journaling is key in how I've worked through my shadow work. Enabling me to write things that I can't always say out loud is a quick and easy way to get things out of my brain. I also use art, music and meditation during shadow work, enabling me to push the limits of my subconscious mind to release the information I need to work on. So I'd already spoken a little bit about art, but I hadn't really spoken about music and meditation in the shadow work sense. How many of us, when we're feeling really happy and excited or looking forward to something, do we stick on some music that makes us want to dance? That's us expressing feelings. When we're really sad, perhaps we're going through a breakup, we put on depressing music about breaking up. That's us expressing our emotions. So this in itself is kind of shadow work. You're processing that emotion through listening to music. If you're lucky enough to be able to make your own music, perhaps make your own music as a really good way of working through shadow. Now, what I also tend to do when I am listening to music for that emotional work through is list them. So I will write down what music I've listened to. If I don't want to write the particular topic down as to why I'm upset or why I'm really happy, I'll just write the music for the day that I've listened to. And eventually, over time, you will see a pattern, and it's identifying these patterns and finding a balance in those patterns that we get to that higher vibration. Meditation. Now, I've said about it doing the grounding and levelling my consciousness before I do shadow work, but I also do meditations with my shadow self. Now, that's a more advanced thing to do. When I'm in this meditation, I see my shadow self in front of me and we have discussions. Not everybody can do that, and that's perfectly fine. It's just something that I do as part of my practice. Your shadow self, if you are able to do this, may not want to present themselves straight away. and they may present themselves in a way that you weren't expecting. I know with my shadow self, I don't actually look like me. I look like somebody completely different, and I didn't recognise who this person was when I first interacted with them. It was only through doing the shadow work that I realised that that's who it was. Your shadow self is your subconscious self, not your negative self. This is a misconception when people say that shadow work is all about being in the dark. It's not. It's exploring the darkness inside yourself, which is in shadow. Your subconscious is the metaphor. Well, no, darkness is the metaphor for your subconscious, not as in negative. Does that make sense? Quite often I hear people say when they talk about shadow work, oh, it's all negative. It's not. It's nothing to do with negativity per se. There are negative aspects because our subconscious holds memories. Our subconscious is everything that we've ever experienced stored in a box. And when you open that box is when your shadow self comes out. So these are the things that we're aiming to feel, okay? And through doing these journaling prompts and doing the art and doing the music and meditations is how we heal through all of this. Now, if you've done shadow work before, or perhaps you're going to do some of these exercises, I would really, really love some feedback. Please give me feedback. If you're not comfortable sharing on the Facebook page, perhaps you've done your some art about how you look on a bad day and how you look on a good day. Like I said, the self-portraits. I would really love to see your outcomes. But if you're not comfortable publishing on the Facebook page, or even on Patreon, if you're on Patreon, please feel free to send me a message, a private message. I will never ever share anything that you send to me unless you ask me to. All I want to see is some progress. The whole point of me doing these is to help you and to help other people, because I don't ever want anybody to struggle through the things that I've had to struggle through and not have a support system there. I want to be that support for you. So please do let me know if you found this video useful. Leave some comments below. Perhaps you have other ideas on what shadow work should be that are completely different to mine. Please let me know right down below. Anything that I've said, please comment below and just give me some feedback, because that's what's really important to me. I'm only doing this for you guys, and if it's not something you're interested in, please do let me know. Okay? So, as I said, I will link all of the various bits and bobs on the links below, i.e. the Patreon. The Patreon, if you do decide you want to go on there, these are on the £2 and above levels. There's 3 levels. There's £2, £5.50 and £11.50. Obviously this is in UK money, okay? The £11.50 is all access to everything. The £5.50 is access to half, and the £2 is an access to quarter of what's on the Patreon as a whole. I've put these as the £2 ones and up. So if you only want to be on the £2 level, you'll get these included on that £2 level, okay? And as I said, these ones are free on the Patreon, so everybody can have them and print them out, all right? I really hope that I've inspired some of you to work on your shadow selves and to work through any mental health issues that you perhaps have or struggle with. And I really hope that this has been helpful for you. It's a little bit of a different video for me because this is sort of my first teaching video. In all of the others, it's just been looking through books of shadows or crafting. So I'm interested to know if this is something that's going to work out or not. And I've only done it because I've had a lot of requests. Some of you may or may not know that I am the High Priestess of the Coven that I am in. So all of this is stuff that I teach in my coven on a face-to-face value. So I'm interested to see if this will work online. Obviously, with the fibro, I sometimes struggle to get my words out. So I do apologise if I haven't made sense or if I've mumbled or stuttered or spoken too fast. Unfortunately, it is part of my fibromyalgia and issues with my anxiety, because believe it or not, making videos is a very anxious process for me. So yes, love and light to all of you, brightest blessings, and I hope to see you in the next video, where we will hopefully be looking at some of the journals that I've made and books of shadows that I've made, and hopefully this time next week we'll do a grounding meditation. Blessings.